what do you do in the face of huge risks or huge, things that you can't do anything about, and about the how do you balance the emotion and the rationality of your response to that, right? Because we see you could argue that Dr. Brand's failure mode is he's too rational about it. Like, we're going to solve this problem with this sending the human eggs into space, and we're going to pretend to solve the problem with the equations, but that was never going to work. Like, I'm hyper rational. I just don't think it's going to work, so I'm not going to keep trying, right? Whereas Dr. Mann is too emotional about it when he gets over. I personally have to solve this problem. I have to have ownership of it. Characters that freeze in a situation or freak out in a situation, or who say, oh, anyway, we're just doomed. We're just going to stay here and farm until we run out of food. Like, that's too far in the emotional direction. But this balance of, I use the emotion to motivate me. I use the emotion to clarify why I'm doing this. But then I use the rationality to navigate a path, however narrow it might be, right? I use the emotion to say it's necessary for us to survive, so we're going to try. And I use the rationality of, but I can't pilot the ship that precisely, so I'm going to have the robot do it, right? That's the blend that we're looking for, right? And Murph's emotional intelligence of, like, I desperately want humanity to survive. I desperately want, my father to have meant something, right? I'm going to use that to motivate me. But then I'm going to sit here and I'm going to work out the Morse code. Like, I'm going to sit here and stare at this problem until I've got another way that it can go. That's a really difficult balance to walk when you get presented with something. I think, and this will maybe a good time to bring in some practical applications. Like, what are situations where you might feel like this, even past the giant wave situation? Now we're into the existential threat situation, or the all is lost, everything I've ever believed is bogus situation.
I think bringing in now like a business example is helpful here, because as we look at that balancing of rationality and emotions, I think you could also look at that because machines are wholly rational. You're not rational in terms of rational, like in cold dead truth, this is the way things are, but rational in terms of their inputs. They can only be rational based on their inputs. That's it. They're just purely logical. There's a model driving everything. So it can only be the output can only be a redistributed form of the inputs in some way. As we then look at, though, humans have gut feel. Humans have the ability, like Cooper did in that moment, to say, chase down that ship right now, otherwise we're doomed. I don't care if you don't think there's a chance that we can catch it. Like, I have this underlying whatever love is that transcends time and space that is dragging me to complete this mission, that won't let me let this mission go, and it's pulling on my emotions in a positive, he's taking the stress in a positive way to pull him towards his objectives. Now, this is a movie, so obviously it's like really big and fantastic and stuff, but I think we can see this in an everyday situation with just the way that we interface with technology. There's a lot of leaders that see automation, that see data science, that see, new applications and services and all these different things as what we need to do, right? That is the what. As long as that is the what, though, what is the purpose of it? Again, going back to what we talked about in episode 1, how are we going to do it? So let's say in this example, you want to have a better way to run your business. So you want to have more control. You're going to start pulling all of this data from all of these different systems and inputs and maybe external data sources that tell you things about the environment and all these other things. And you're going to pull them all in and put them in some sort of a dashboard to give you a better way to run your business. So I think, Brian, you and I have both had experiences doing things like that before. And you can end up on the very rational side of that spectrum where you're like, I just want the machine to tell me what to do, and I'll just pull the trigger, basically. Just have the machine tell me what to do, have it process as much data as we have access to. And then the other side of that is like, maybe considered to be a more old school or gut feel mindset that's like, but I don't trust machines. Maybe I should just, maybe we should just whiteboard this up, or like, maybe, just have it give me this information I'm already getting, but I just want it automated now. And really, isn't the answer somewhere in the middle where there's still room for those emotions to influence the way that we respond to things, but we leverage machines to their best extent. We leverage rationality it like machines as almost like a rationalizer in this
Mm-hmm.
situation to be able to tell us, okay, well, TARS is telling me what the rational solution is. My brain is telling me what the emotional solution is. As the human who actually understands the purpose and mission, how do I find the line?
Right. And this is, in this movie, we see the decision making is inherently residing with the humans, right? We don't, Tars is AI to the extent that he can have a conversation with you and can solve problems really fast, but he's not AI in the sense that he's the captain and everybody else is doing his bidding, right? We're still putting humans in charge in this conception of it, and that's not, like you said, that's not necessarily the way all businesses are looking at it. But you can use technology in a couple ways, right? You can use like, oh, I'm hearing the voice from my team that says there's a problem. Let's get some data and find out if it's a real problem. Let's find out how big the problem is. Let's see if we can detect, does it look like another problem that we've had before, right? So that's, emotion triggered. Then let's add a rational layer and see if we can verify what's going on, or if it's just like, oh, this actually looks like the last 6 times this happened. It's fine, right? There's the other way around, right? Which is there's way too much data that we could ever possibly digest. We should use the machine to sift through all that and find the outliers or find the things that look like they're about to get bad. And then we'll dispatch some humans to go look at it for real and do a much more nuanced and, fine grained and intuitive understanding of it. And then we'll decide what those problems are to solve. Like those are both valid methods. But in the presence of a complicated world, in the presence of infinite amounts of data, in the presence of so much stuff happening, and it's hard to tell which things are which, like just doing it with just humans running around like brute force is maybe is not going to be your most effective technique, and just like do whatever the machine learning model tells you to do is also highly risky. Famously, the real estate company Zillow a couple years ago was involved. They had incredible amounts of data about real estate transactions, and they were able to make forecast models of what they thought houses were going to be worth. So they started this thing called Zillow Offers, where they were algorithmically identifying and making offers on houses, so that they could buy them and then flip them in 6 weeks. They were, oh, we forecast this house is worth more money than it's currently asking for. Or we forecast that it will be worth more money in 3 months, and so we should jump on it, and then we'll turn around some money. And this worked really great for like 2 or 3 years until there was a global pandemic and a following recession and a complete, crippling of the real estate market. And hey, guess what? The machine learning model was not trained on something like that because they didn't have any data that looked like that. And they ended up with an $800 billion loss, or $800 million loss in 1 quarter, and we're going to wind this business down, and we have 7,000 houses we're sitting on that we have to sell in a hurry. Right? This was an inappropriate deployment of machine learning, not just for forecasting, but actually for real-time decision making at a huge scale, without sort of appropriate evaluation of the risk, without appropriate evaluation of like, well, how much trouble could we possibly get in if we're wrong? So what was the purpose? The purpose there was make a bunch of money in the real estate market, but it was only valid in one set of conditions. And as we see in this movie, right, sometimes the conditions look terrible, or sometimes the conditions are outside of your experience, and you have to be able to navigate that. And we aren't at a point yet with machine learning where that's a thing that we know how to do.
Yeah, I mean, overall, AI and machines in general are constrained by what they have seen before. Specifically, when we're talking about like MLAI, it is constrained by its inputs. If you do not have a model for what happened during COVID in your Zillow offers model, it will not know how to respond to that situation. Similarly, when we look at how we talked about at the beginning, how Murph responded to a intractable force, and we can kind of weave all of this together a little bit. It's not going to be a nice tight package. It isn't usually like that on Wonder Tour, but you can see what Murph does. And again, Murph has the ability as a human who has this great sense of purpose to look past the previous inputs. The previous inputs, aka if we just were to totally simplify it down to Dr. Brand's equation, would suggest we cannot rectify what we know about gravity with relativity. If that's the case, plan B. She didn't take that for an answer, though, because she looked at it and she was able to look past it, and she said, but there's things I don't understand. I can still learn. I'm going to keep learning. I'm going to keep understanding. And that's where it's like, now, again, you have a use for machines. I have a thing I need to learn. Let's go work with machines to learn that thing. Let's see what they can teach me. Let's constantly validate if it actually applies to our purpose and if it's wise to implement it. And that's what we're going to get into here more. It's not all going to be just AI and machine learning, but that's what we're going to get into more in our future episodes here.